Hi guys, recently the Maxis crew held a Ask Me Anything on Reddit and we learned a few new things, so let's get started. Okay, so one thing I found interesting is that, they have said that since SimCity is online, there was some concern that there may be some sort of monthly subscription, but Maxis has said that there's going to be absolutely no monthly subscription for SimCity whatsoever. It's just a once-off for the game and that's it, and you'll be able to play it, which is good to hear. Another interesting feature that they've mentioned is that there's going to be seasons in SimCity. They talk about how the water map is influenced by the different seasons, with the water evaporating most during the summer, most precipitation during the winter, and sort of average precipitation during the spring and autumn. So that's really good to hear. You can tell which season you're in by looking at the trees. There's a link to a photo there where the trees are all orange um, because of the season being autumn. Okay, so this one's quite interesting because they talk about how the interactions between wealth and happiness comes in. Interestingly enough, in SimCity, money does buy happiness. They track happiness and sadness with tokens. These can come into play where a sim comes home with money. A sim will go out with that money and they go shopping or whatever. They buy stuff and they return home with happiness. They can also be used to pay rent, and then when the Sims can't pay rent, they lose happiness. So you have a balance of when you can buy the stuff that you want and you need, you are happy, but when you can't afford to buy these things, you lose happiness and you become sad. And then that affects just a variety of things. Uh, uh, they've gone to this to explain a bit more that, education tokens work the same as these happiness tokens. So you can work out which households are happy and which households are sad, and which households are educated. And these all affect, traffic, travel time, and eventually the lifetime of Sims in the SimCity. So a big question in everyone's mind was, what happens because we need a consistent internet connection to play this game? What happens when the internet cuts out? Max has answered this by basically saying, we'll try and keep your state. If the internet cuts out, we'll try and maintain the state for as long as we possibly could, so you can recover gracefully, but the time that they use to define it, so they say we'll be able to maintain your game state for a short time. That short time was still being defined, so we don't know how long it will last for, but people are getting the feeling it's about a couple of minutes. So hopefully if you lose your net, it's not for a couple of hours, but if you lose it, say it just turns off and back on again in a couple of minutes, you should be able to resume your game without any issues. But any longer than that, and there might be a bit of a problem. So Ecologies are finally returning back to SimCity. Ecologies, if you don't know, is basically when it's a combination of architecture and biology, and it's those buildings that contain their own little life system. You think of those big glass buildings, with all the forests inside them, kind of their own farms. There was a sort of, a small little image of them in the very first couple of, pictures for SimCity 5, but no one was really sure what it was because it looked like a spaceship, but it was kind of big and fat. So but they have confirmed that archaeologies are returning, so that's great to hear. Okay, so another big question is why the spaces between the cities themselves? Um, this was answered basically because of graphics. It's going to be too intensive to have the cities right next door to each other loading at the same time. So they figured that it might be easier just to, they worked out that it was best to trade off the distances between the cities rather than have to shrink the city sizes down to make up for the performance loss. The devs from SimCity also talked about why the region size was only limited to 16 cities. And this was basically because of client performance issues. They were struggling to, if they made the region size any larger, it was affecting game performance in a negative fashion. So they figured, it's probably best to have 16 at the most. It was the number that met their budget the best because they have to work out every city because they all work together with this multi-city play. That every city plays in with each other. So to calculate all that takes up a lot of memory, and any more than that was just taking up too much. That was affecting game performance too much. So some people are missing out on terraforming. Personally, this doesn't bother me too much because I didn't use terraforming as it was. I always played how the region was set out. But Maxis has said that even though terraforming is not returning, the regions that they are giving us, so they're giving us pre-made regions, will be as varied as possible. And because water is so critical to this game, there's going to be a lot of variations with how water is set up. But most cities in the game are near water in some form, so you're just not going to have any water shortages that easily. But you will get varied regions, even if they are pre-made ones. The tax one is quite interesting. Taxes seem to have undergone quite a large change from the previous SimCities. Whereas in the previous SimCities, you were just straight in taxing people as it goes. In this one, you don't tax people until you get the town hall, because effectively you have no central government or no local government until you have the town hall set up. So after the town hall is set up, you'll be able to introduce finer tax controls, and eventually um, it introduces them to you as it goes rather than dumping them on you straight away. So the introduction to SimCity is becoming a lot simpler than what it was in SimCity 4, which is good because in SimCity 4 it's really difficult to start off with unless you know what you're doing. They also said that loans are returning as well, so that's good to see because loans can be quite useful for expansion where you can't afford it. The devs also decided to talk about furthermore about how universities shape the city. Somebody asked whether universities gain money through school fees that students have to pay towards the university. Max has confirmed that the money that students would pay towards university does not go to the mayor, so unfortunately you don't get that money. But education does affect your industry demands and your residential demands as well. So, with high education, high-tech industry replaces dirty industry, just like it did in SimCity 4. And then that students from other cities can visit a university in your city. So you will increase the education all around. So you do become quite popular with other cities as well. So unfortunately, they have confirmed that subways will not be in SimCity 5. They've said that they're not planning on doing subways at the moment, so it could be in future DLC, but at the moment, for initial release, we will not be seeing subways. They said that streetcar is really where it's at because we can watch them going up and down the rail tracks. It's a more visual representation of public transport than say subways because they're underground. And that also is because it's a lot more difficult to build an entire underground layer now that they're not using piping as it was in SimCity 4, because piping goes along roadways as with electricity. So there's no need to do the piping as you would do in SimCity 4. So there's no underground layer that they have to make, especially just for subways. So they decided that would have the streetcars instead of subways. Okay, so as before, they've just said that each region has up to 16 cities in it, but you can have multiple regions, whereas in SimCity 4 it's a little bit more difficult to have multiple regions. In this game, you can have quite a large number of regions, but that is yet to be defined how many regions you can actually have when the game ships. So we'll probably find out that information, how many regions we can run. It may be 5, it could be 10, it could be just as small as 3, but by the sounds of it, there could be quite a few regions that we have run as we go. One big thing that's been bugging people is the space in between buildings, because people are getting fed up with that grass space right next to big towers or smaller residential houses. There'll be that grass space in between, which just doesn't fit in with how it would normally look in the real world. There would be an alleyway or just concrete. So SimCity has said that they're working on it. They're filling buildings with asphalt concrete storage yards, depending on what the building is nearby. So they are working on it. But they do need the space for alleyways so the garbage can pile up for the rubbish trucks to come pick it up. So it's something that they're working on. They understand where we're coming from, and it's just a bit difficult with the shapes of the roads to do the spaces evenly without stretching stuff out. So it should be something that should be done for release, and hopefully it fixes what does annoy some people with the spaces in between buildings. So one Reddit user pointed out in the video that when they placed the police station, it only had a very limited area on the streets where it had effective influence. If you go back and watch that video, you'll see it. He puts the police station down, and it only has a small green bar on the road in front of it, where it seems that it's only effective for that spot. So Maxis devs go into a bit more detail on how it works. With basically this police station has an immediate influence area directly around it, but the police cars themselves go around the city and exert the same influence. So the police cars will drive around a larger area and will exert the same area of influence that the police station does, because they are effectively they're mobile police as they move around, and they will prevent crime or arrest crime as it happens. And so when you upgrade the building itself, it has detective wings, police helicopters, and community outreach vans that all expand the effective area of it. So it's not just limited to the small area in front of it, or in SimCity 4, the circle around it. You'll see the police cars as they move around, they will have an influence over the area around it. So I hope this video brought some more information out of the dark for you on the new SimCity that comes out next year. There are a few things that I'm still looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to pick it up the day it comes out. I put my pre-order in. So expect more videos on SimCity. Thanks for watching.